Let's go back to Pierre Martin for more on the New Hampshire primary. He's a professor of politics at the University of Montreal and also a columnist who covers politics quite a bit. Pierre, what are your thoughts on things? Obviously, we know who the winners are, and there's only two candidates on the Democratic side. So really, when you look at the Republican side, it's going to be this battle for number two. How important is that?
It's hugely important because, everyone expected coming out of Iowa that the one with the momentum, the one who was supposed to come in second and establish himself as a major contender would have been Marco Rubio. And of course he did, most people have said that he's done not so well in the debate. He's not proven to be as good a candidate as he promised to be. And he's one of the big losers of this campaign. But also don't forget the Governor Christie from New Jersey, who had invested a great deal of energy into the campaign in New Hampshire. It wouldn't be surprising if he declares, if he bows out tonight, because he had bet so much on New Hampshire as a stepping stone to a campaign, then that the fact that he's not even getting 10% makes him a big loser. Also, of course, the big winner, actually, the one that is doing much better than might have been expected some time ago, is John Kasich. John Kasich is one that has been flying pretty much under the radar and is probably will be pitted as the replacement to a very disappointing Jeb Bush, who has not done quite as well as his funders might have wished, and again, of course, a disappointing performance by Marco Rubio. So look at John Kasich as perhaps the candidate of the so-called establishment of the party, and some people are saying the candidate of the more moderate, the more reasonable right, although is definitely a candidate of the right and a very conservative fiscal candidate.
Pierre, let me ask you this question. There just seems to be so much rage, disenchantment, people interested in these outsider candidates, and yet there seems to be this disconnect. Gas prices have come down, unemployment's come down, actually things look much better, much rosier, and yet people are so unhappy. How do we square these two?
Well, first of all, again, one thing we have to remember is that Iowa and New Hampshire are not fully representative of the whole United States. And for example, even though Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side has scored a convincing win in New Hampshire and has done a lot better than expected in Iowa, he is still way behind Hillary Clinton in the national polls. And the states that are coming up will be a lot more difficult for Sanders, places like South Carolina, Nevada, and many of the states that are up on March 1 for the so-called Super Tuesday are strongholds for Hillary Clinton. And the numbers there are, she's like plus 30 or plus 25%, in some cases plus 40. And so even though this momentum from Sanders will give him some way ahead in these states in the next few days, it's hardly conceivable that he can actually roll the table from here because of the strength of Hillary Clinton in those states. And again, the economy actually is not doing all that terribly, but there are matters of concerns in terms on the Democratic side, in terms of inequality and the redistribution of the gains from this economic growth is perceived to be unfair. And on the Republican side, Donald Trump is seizing on the nationalism and security concerns and some, in part, squarely xenophobic reaction to various situations from the far right of the Republican Party. And again, this is just 1/3 or thereabout of the voters. He captured 35% of New Hampshire, and his vote has not been all that much more than 40%. So there's still quite a bit of room for others to catch up, if only they can narrow down the field to just a few candidates.
Pierre, it sounds in your mind like the Democratic field to be settled rather quickly. What about the Republican field? How long do you think it'll take before some of these other candidates drop out and we start to figure out who's going to be the nominee on the Republican side?
Well, there probably should be, as I said earlier, one dropout tonight, which probably should be Chris Christie, because he definitely has done less than expected. But many of those candidates have plenty of money. They, in some cases, are running for reasons that may not necessarily be for winning. People like Ben Carson or Carly Fiorina, they'll run for as long as they have money, and they're kind of a spoiler in that race. But the fact that you have such division in the vote at this point in the race, and that you haven't settled in 2 or 3 frontrunners, means that someone like Donald Trump can actually benefit from his current advance and gain and continue to look like a winner, and then catch up momentum with only a relatively small portion of the vote, which is from somewhere between 30 and 40%. And again, as the field narrows down, it becomes a different race, because a significant proportion of the Republican electorate does not want an outsider like Donald Trump to come in and transform their vision of the party. So it's far from settled, and we'll see in the next few days and weeks quite a bit of movement on the Republican side.
Pierre, how do you see the money issue? I mean, it's almost obscene how much money is spent in these elections. What's going to happen in terms of the free flowing of cash? Donald Trump's still very flush with cash. Jeb Bush still has a lot. How much money is going to be spent in this campaign?
Again, it's interesting, because the candidates that have spent the most money have not been the candidates that have done the best. And the case in point is Jeb Bush, who has spent nearly $100 million for a campaign that has not gone that far. And Donald Trump has come in as a candidate that beats all of the usual ways of doing politics by dispensing from having to pay for publicity, because he is his own publicity. He attracts media attention, and he's already well known. So money has become a strange factor in this campaign, but in the long run, because it's also associated with duration, organization. For example, on the Democratic side, the Clinton campaign will actually benefit from being more visible, better organized, and have more staying power, because it has a more solid financial backing, although Senator Sanders does have a significant amount of money to count on, and he can also rely on the fact that the provenance of his money is yes.
We've run out of time, but thank you so much, Pierre Martin, for joining us from Montreal.